I've made close to $30 million in the last couple of years using this simple Google Sheet. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through how you can use this Google Sheet in order to scale your business. And if you want to get access to it, you can instantly download it by clicking the link in the description down below. So before I actually walk through how to use this Google Sheet, let me explain why this Google Sheet works so well. So I believe in a scaling methodology known as the theory of constraints. It's how I've scaled my business and how I've scaled thousands of my clients' businesses. And in very simple terms, the theory of constraint states that in every business, there's in essence one major constraint that you should focus on first and solve before you move on to the next one. Now, a big mistake that I see a lot of my clients making and a lot of business owners making is that they treat all constraints the same. When in reality, and this graphic that I actually illustrate this with my clients, you can see here that in this example, there's two actually pretty obvious constraints, and there's another constraint over here. But in reality, this is the constraint that you need to work to solve first, because if you're able to solve this one, this is the one that's constricting the most flow, and you'll automatically start generating more leads, calls, sales, and clients for your business, right? And what most people will do is they'll focus on this constraint over here, or they'll focus on this constraint over here, especially if these constraints might be a little bit louder, a little bit more obvious, or my clients find it easier to solve this constraint, and so they're going to go over there and solve that constraint, when in reality, not identifying that the real problem is actually further up in the funnel. So understanding the theory of constraints has helped me literally make tens of millions of dollars, and it's exactly what this Google Sheets will highlight for you if you decide to use it as well. So I'm going to walk through an example scenario using this Google Sheet. Now, in this example, I'm going to be specifically talking about using advertising spend to scale your business. Now, you can remove and change these wordings and columns around to make it for organic content, outbound emails, whatever you want to do. You know, I'm very bullish on organic content, specifically YouTube videos. That's one of the things we help our clients with, is scaling their business and making their ads more profitable using organic content. But this one's just going to, for simplicity, just going to talk about advertising spend. So the yellow rows here are ones that you can adjust or change, and the white ones are ones that are going to be essentially equations from the results from the yellow rows. So let's just walk through a little example. Let's say you have a business and you're spending $100,000 a month on advertising. Let's say that on average, your cost per thousand impressions, so CPM, that's essentially the metric that most advertisers use to see how much it costs them to advertise their market, is $60. And let's say that you have a click-through rate of 1%, meaning that the people that see your ads, 1% of them click on it. That means that your cost per click, which is essentially a function of what your CPM is, and your click-through rate is $6. And then after somebody clicks from your ad and they go to an instant form or an opt-in page, you have an opt-in page conversion rate percentage. So this is how many people that click actually give you, let's say, their name, email, phone number. So let's say the industry standard is around 20%, which means that your cost per lead is about $30. And of course, that is a function of your cost per click, which is a function of these two numbers here. And you're going to generate totally about 3,333 leads out of $100,000 in ad spend. Once somebody becomes a lead, obviously you're trying to get them to book a call. Now, you have a few ways that you can get people to book calls. One of them is going to be on that page through that funnel right there. What do they see right after they give you their name, email, phone number? Most traditionally, it's going to be like a video sales letter or some kind of ask for them to book a call. And then you also have other methods like outbounding, for example, appointment setters. So you hire somebody to pick up the phone and call this lead within 5 minutes of them coming in, and maybe they're not booking from your actual video sales letter or your funnel, and instead they're booking from speaking to somebody on your team, typically known as an appointment setter. So we look at the inbound to lead to booking rate, which is the amount of people that booked without you having to do anything, and let's say that's 5%. And then you have an outbound lead to booking rate. This is what your outbound sales team, aka your setting team, is able to do in order to make some commission, get a hold of these leads and convince them to book a call. Let's say that's also 5%, which means your total lead to book ratio is about 10%, which means that the total book calls out of 3,333 leads is going to be 333. And your cost per book call is $300. So hopefully you can see how I'm getting this equation inside of here. I'm going to walk through and play with these numbers a little bit at the end of this. Then you have show up rate. So how many people that book a call actually show up to that call? We have 75% here. Then you have total taken calls, which is the amount of book calls times your show up rate, so 250 taken calls, and your cost per taken call. So in this example here, it's costing me $400 for my sales team to speak with somebody and make them an offer. And that's even a really great number to track because, for example, let's say you have an offer that's $1,000 and it's costing you $400 in order to get on the phone to pitch somebody this offer. Well, you're probably not going to close 50%, one in every two people. So already you can feel that there's some metrics that are messed up, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Then you have your close rate, how many people that get on a call that actually close. And I want to really quickly talk about a popular metric that a lot of people in my industry track, which is offer rate. And that's how many people that you get on the call with that you actually make an offer to. In my opinion, you're getting a little bit too nitpicky when you get into offer rate. In essence, every single person that you're getting on the phone with, you should be making an offer in one form or the other. And if you're getting on the phone with a lot of unqualified people, then we need to figure out what's going on in this lead to booking process and maybe even your advertising process that's attracting all these unqualified people. Can we automatically filter them out of the funnel before they even get to the sales call? The other issue, in my opinion, with the offer rate is it's very manipulative. You can have a salesperson only make offers to 50% of their calls and say these people are unqualified, and so that number is going to fluctuate really greatly in any kind of sales funnel. And I'm doing this tracking sheet here mostly for those of you that are watching that are CEOs. And so you want to be able to look at the very bare bones numbers inside of here without having too much fluctuation. So if I'm thinking, oh great, it's costing me $400 a cost per taken call and I have a 20% close rate, then I should roughly know what my cost per acquisition is. But then if you learn that your sales team is only offering for 50% of the people, well, now you got to times that number by 2, and it gets way too confusing. So I don't include offer rates, and I've actually helped scale quite a bit of businesses by totally removing it and cutting the sales team members that were essentially manipulating that. So that means that the total units closed, so how many deals did you close this month, is 50, which of course we're taking the number of taken calls times the close rate. And then let's talk about the pricing options here. So whenever you close a deal, your total contract value, this is how much they're signing the proposal for. So if you're some kind of done-for-you service and you offer, let's say $2,000 a month and your average client stays with you for 5 months, then you could put $10,000 in here. Maybe you're a high-ticket coach or consultant and it's worth $10,000 and you could put $10,000 in here. The idea is how much money should you expect to get from this person over the lifetime of them with you? And then you have the cash to revenue ratio. Now, this is a really interesting statistic. And personally, I actually don't see anybody else tracking this number. And we have a really great client of ours. His name's Justin. Actually, I have a case study of him on this channel, how we literally doubled his profitability in less than 30 days just by increasing his cash to revenue ratio. And what this means in essence is how much money are you collecting from your clients out of this total contracted value? So let's say you run a high ticket offer and you're selling something for $10,000. A lot of people, actually I was on a call with a client yesterday, they had a 40% cash to revenue ratio, meaning that they were collecting $4,000 out of the total $10,000. Well, that's not bad, but it makes it really difficult to scale because you're waiting for the second or third month for those payments to come in for you to be able to invest more inside of advertising. So what we think is a really healthy number, our current cash to revenue ratio is 75%. So 75, 80% puts you in a really, really great spot. And you can manipulate a little bit how the sales team is doing their offers and their pitches, and you can adjust the payment plans in order to force people to increase their cash to revenue ratio. And actually, if you go back and look at that case study of my client Justin, when I interviewed him, the main thing that we did was we just removed his lowest payment plan. That was all that we did. Close rate didn't change. And so the number of units stayed the same, which means he was making more cash every single month. And that more cash equaled more profit to his bottom line because obviously all the other expenses stay the same. So this could be literally quite simply just removing the lowest payment plan and seeing how that affects some of these other numbers here. So at a $10,000 contract value and an 80% cash to revenue ratio, you're talking about $8,000 cash per close, and you're collecting $400,000 in that month. Your revenue close per close is $10,000, and you're collecting roughly $500,000 in revenue that month. Once again, a big issue I see a lot of people is they stop at these numbers here. They think, oh, this is perfect, this is great, let's just scale the heck out of this. But what they're missing out on is truly creating a picture of what this company would look like at scale. And this also really helps you when you're trying to figure out different marketing models, different pricing models, different offers that you can create. A lot of people aren't extrapolating it out to, for example, what I'm going to go to here in a second. Let's say like roughly we're getting to, which is $500,000 a month in advertising spend, right? Or $700,000 a month in advertising spend. Most of you probably don't want to just wait at what you're currently at. Let's say right now you're at $100,000 a month in ad spend. Well, this looks manageable, but what you're not doing is you're not projecting this all the way out to what if I wanted to 5x the business, 10x the business, and so you you need to have all of these numbers in here. And most notably, what you're not counting in is number one, delinquency rate. So of the people that paid, let's say the 80% in cash, the people that are on the payment plan, the other 20% of people that are on the payment plan, what percentage of those people go delinquent? And you have to go chase the money down and maybe send them to collections or whatever else you're going to do in order to collect that money, right? That's a really important number to track. And we've seen that historically be anywhere between 8 and 13%. Once again, I was on a call with a client yesterday. They had theirs at as high as 40%. And one of the reasons it was as high as 40% was because they offered a coaching offer where the offer was 2 months long, but their payment plans went as long as 8 months. So you have somebody who's paying for 6 months after they've stopped receiving the value, you money, which is really difficult. Imagine you own a house, or I'm sorry, you're renting a house and you move out of that house and you're still paying rent 8 months later. You're probably gonna be kind of pissed when it comes to month 6, month 7, and month 8. You're like, why am I still paying rent? I don't even live at this house anymore. And even though you said, well, it's in the contract and that's how much this offer is worth, well, in reality, you're just always gonna have a higher delinquency rate, aka people not making all their payments, when there's a huge gap between when somebody's receiving value and when they're making those payments, okay? So that's a really important number to know. And then the refund and chargeback rate. And I might get in comments, oh, I have a 0 refund percent chargeback. Make $30 million and tell me that you don't have anybody that you're having to refund or anybody that's charging you back, okay? It's all of these numbers increase at scale. Just the same way your cost per lead is going to increase at scale and your cost per call is going to increase at scale. I'll give you a really great example. We have actually lower than a 1% refund and chargeback rate, but unfortunately, we had a client that we enrolled just the other day, and he submitted 10 out of 10 in all of his feedback scores. He was like literally happy. He was loving everything. He was getting results. And then I woke up 2 days ago and I saw that he had charged back his payment. And I was like, why would he charge back his payment? I don't understand. And I asked my client success director and we went deeper and said, like, this makes no sense. And finally, we get a hold of our client's, I think it was either a sister or brother, and they told us, I'm not going to obviously say the client's name for their privacy, but they told us that the client actually went to rehab. And so they were down to their bottom dollar and they needed to pay for the rehab, and they just unfortunately charged back the most recent thing. Now, I'm not going to get into whether we're going to fight the chargeback or not, blah, blah, blah. But the point being that that's something that's totally out of my control. One of my values is extreme ownership. And so I want to own as much as I possibly can. But the fact that like this client was showing no signs of having problems in their life, the fact that he ended up charging us back, well, that's money that's going to come out of our bank account. And so you want to look at these numbers because a lot of you are operating just totally in the dark. You have no idea what these numbers are. And so you're playing business by closing your eyes and just throwing at a dartboard. When in reality, you should track this. And instead of saying, oh, I never want my clients to refund or charge back, understand that there's a certain percentage that's out of your control and calculate that into your metrics here. Same thing with delinquency rate. Calculate it in instead of saying, oh, I want 0% or let's never do any payment plans for that reason. You can start playing around with, okay, well, maybe if we adjust our cash to revenue ratio, even though we lower the amount of payment plans that we have, maybe we're actually going to net out with more money because the higher the payment plans, the higher the delinquency rate. And so without having to close all these lower quality leads, for example, you're actually doing less units, which means that you have less operational and fulfillment drag, which means you should be more profitable, right? All these things nobody thinks about. They just kind of guess and they think, oh, they see this big number right here, revenue contract, and they think, oh, fantastic, let's just close as many units as possible, when you really need to break it down to the lowest level that you can here, which means that your total revenue collected out of $500,000, you can expect to see about $445,000 hitting your bank account over the span of whatever your contract length is, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, you get the idea. So I shouldn't be banking on all $500,000 reaching me. I should be banking more on $445,000 reaching me, which means my total cost per acquisition in order to, whenever I'm running these ads, is $2,000, which is taking this $100,000 and dividing it by these number of units closed, which is 50. And I'm going to actually show you a few examples of how we played around with some of these numbers for our clients in a moment, which means my cash return on ad spend is 4x. I'm spending $100,000 and I'm making $400,000 in cash. And my total revenue return on ad spend, when everything is said and done, will be 4.45 because I'm getting back $445,000 from $100,000 in ad spend. spend. But we're not done yet, ladies and gentlemen. If you come down here, we need to see how many setters do we need, okay? Because I'm talking about trying to scale this thing, let's say to $500,000 a month or $700,000 a month. And so you're going to have to increase the amount of ad spend, which means you're going to increase the amount of leads, which means you're going to have to increase the amount of setters. So in this example here at $100,000 in ad spend, the number of setters that we need is 4.63, which you can't, unfortunately, get half of a person. I'd love to. That could probably save me some money in payroll. And so you need to get 5 people. And this is assuming 30 leads per 22 working days per setter. So that's roughly the number that we found, 30 new inbound leads for 22 days a week, which I think is 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday. And that comes out to... if you take that number and divide it into the number of total leads you have, which is 3,333, you'll get roughly 5 setters that you need. Then you have your setter commission. So this varies person to person. It could be 3%, 5%, 10%, but you want to put that inside there. And this means that your average setter commission is $4,800 in this example. Another really important number as you're scaling, because I'm going to talk about profit here in a moment, but another issue I see a lot of people doing is they're hiring setters. They're trying to pay them, let's say, 3%, because that's what some coach or guru told them to do, and they haven't run the numbers out, and they're telling the setter, oh yeah, you'll definitely make $5,000, you'll make $10,000 a month working for me. But the problem is that actually they're going to be making $2,800 a month working for you, right? And so that's going to be a really big issue. That's going to be difficult to scale. So in order to supplement that, you might need to offer $2,000 a month in salary just to get that to the more competitive rate of $5,000. So make sure before you go out and start hiring salespeople or setters that you're understanding what your model looks like, so you can give them a realistic estimate saying that, hey, if you're able to convert 5% of leads from a lead to a call, then you should be expecting roughly $5,000 a month, which is the KPI. But even if you could get it up to, let's say, for example, we get it up to 7% of leads that you're turning into calls, well, now your setter commission is $5,700, right? So that's how you could even show. I've literally pulled up sheets like this on hiring calls and on interviews and shown them what they could expect to make. And what I've learned is that if you can align expectations from the very beginning, you will have unbelievable employee retention, okay? I'm really fortunate to say that, over the past couple of years, I think we've had less than 4 people ever leave our company. We've just let them go, but most people never leave because we've gotten very good at showing what the compensation should look like, right? And projecting it out with them. So that's appointment setters. Then, of course, you have closers, right? So assuming 6 calls booked a day with 22 working days in a month, then you're going to need 2.53 closers, which is really 3 closers. And let's say your closer commission is 10%, which means each closer is going to be making $17,000, which I think is really fantastic. You might even be able to get away, let's say, with 6%, which is going to add more profit to your bottom line, as I'll talk about here in a second, and have each closer making $10,000. And a lot of people are... they have their closers that they're paying $50,000, $60,000, which I've even been there before myself, which I'm not saying is necessarily wrong, but I am saying that in reality, are they doing 5 to 6 times the amount of work? Probably not, as somebody here. And what you should always be looking at is market competitive rates. So could you find another salesperson that would be happy with $10,000 a month, maybe $15,000 a month? Absolutely. So don't just because you started paying somebody, let's say 15% when you first started working with them, don't feel like you always have to pay that person 15%. Because let's say you get up from $100,000 and you start spending, well, actually, technically speaking, I just realized when you increase the ad spend, it actually won't increase that because you have obviously more closers that have to come in. But the idea roughly being that you don't always have to pay this person 15%. And if you projected this out, be comfortable moving it down to 10%. Because as we start playing with these numbers here, you can start seeing this net profit, how much you're making as a company, obviously not including your cost to fulfill. That number is changing as we change all these numbers. So $100,000 I'm spending, and when everything is said and done, and after the people that have been delinquent, after people that have refunded, after we've collected multiple months have passed, we've collected all the money, after I paid my setters, my closers, all that stuff, I should be making $278,000, which is a really good return on $100,000 in ad spend. But if I was able to take this closer commission and let's say take it down to 7%, well, I just made an additional, what is that, $20,000, literally by lowering it by 3%. And so I went from, let's say, 10%, which is $17,000 per closer, and let's say I take it down to 7%. So yeah, they're making $5,000 less, which could be bad, but they're still making $12,000 a month, and you just added an additional $20,000 in profit for your business every single month, which is really critical for scaling advertising spend. So that is essentially what this Google Sheet is and how it works. Let's play around and let me walk you through some examples of what we've done for some of our clients inside this Google Sheet here. So one of the very most obvious ones is a lot of times our clients will come to us, and let's say that this is all of their numbers right here. This is a great example of one of our clients that comes in and they're running all of this. First and foremost, most of our clients aren't even tracking this in the first place. So a lot of times they come to us and they say, oh, I need this, I need that, I need that. And we say, great, we'll be happy to help you with it. But first, let's start tracking. So I have a much more robust tracking system that we use with our clients. I just created this literally right before I shot this video so that I could show you what it looks like in a rough version. And once we start tracking this, they say, oh, our ads aren't profitable. And then we figure out that they are actually at a 4x return on ad spend, or they're at a 4.5x or a 5x return on ad spend, but they had never truly tracked it, right? And this is really worst case scenario. Like you're including delinquency rate, refund rate. And so you're able to say, hey, you're making $278,000 in profit from these ads every single month. And so for a lot of our clients, I'll tell you the main thing that we help them do: double their ad spend, triple their ad spend. So now we're spending $200,000 and now they're making literally over $500,000 a month in profit. Just yesterday, spoke to 2 separate clients who each of them, all they had to do was just increase ad spend. And they were talking to me about adjusting the way that their show up rate process works. And one of them was talking about, hey, they wanted to test new ad creatives. And another one told me, hey, there's a lot of people in my market that are saying the same claim as I am right now. They're all saying the exact same thing. I can't tell you how many ads I see on my phone of everybody saying the same thing. And I was like, okay, well, let's look at your tracking sheet. What are your numbers? What are your ROAS? And he was at a 5x ROAS. And I'm like, my guy, don't worry. You're looking at the wrong constraints inside of here. You're looking at this tiny little constraint all the way over there that's not really constraining your business, when you have this bigger constraint, which is you just need to spend more money on advertising spend. I said, you should 10x your ad spend in the next 5 days. And he's like, well, the problem with that is I need to hire more salespeople. And I said, now that's the real constraint. That's the real problem inside your business. Let's not go over here and create these new ad angles and these new ad creatives because you think that other people are tired of seeing your messaging. Let's take that same energy and put it into finding more salespeople so that you can 5x your business in the next 30 days, right? And you're like, oh my God, right? So one great example is just increasing ad spend. Another really great example, a lot of people don't test out. So let's go back to $100,000 here. Is this click-through rate right here. So a lot of people just are okay with a 0.5 or a 1% click-through rate. But in my experience, let's take this click-through rate and say it's 1% and we're making $278,000. Let's say that we're able to get that to 2%, right? Well, guess what? We literally just increased our net profit to $656,000 by taking our average click-through rate and increasing it by 1%. That is it. Okay, that's the power of adjusting some of these really top of funnel metrics. But what do the majority of people do? Oh, they dick around with the opt-in page conversion rate, and they try to lower the sales, the setter commission by 0.5%, and they try to adjust the payment plans, blah blah blah. When literally all they need to do is increase their click-through rate. And what's a great way to increase your click-through rate is by testing new advertising creatives. But most people, they don't have a system. They don't understand how do you create like 14 to 20 ads in less than an hour, and what's the proper campaign structure to upload them and duplicate them, and how do you scale them correctly. And these are all things that we help our clients with. And so they weren't even thinking of that in the first place. They just accepted the 1%. Even if you just took this number from 1% and you put it to 1.5%, you're doing $467,000 from your previous, I think it was roughly like $100 and something thousand $278,000. So you're almost doubling the business by just increasing the click-through rate by 1.5%. That's how powerful it is to test new advertising creatives. For example, we test 20 new creatives every single week, and we help our clients do the same thing. By the way, I only spend about, let's say, an hour every week inside of our ads manager, and we're spending thousands of dollars a day in ads because I've created a whole system that's very simple. We show our clients that allows me to remove me from the whole process. The other thing is the opt-in conversion rate percent. So you can play around this number here, and you can test increasing it from 20% to 25%. But as you can see, that opt-in conversion rate going from $278,000 at 20% to $372,000 at 25%. Not bad at all. But the problem is, I just showed you a second ago, if we instead just doubled the click-through rate, which is arguably the same amount of work in order to do that, almost 3 times the amount of profit that we're taking home by doing that, right? Well, I think it's probably 2 times the amount of profit. Let's see here. 278, yeah, so it's going to be 2 times the amount of profit. I'm sure I have keyboard warriors here. 656 divided by 278. It's 2.3 times the profit, okay? So you get the idea. By doubling it, you're increasing your profit by 2.3x. So it has monumental multipliers when it comes to increasing your profit margins. Another big constraint that we see with a lot of our clients is that they have almost no self-booking. So everything they do is 100% reliant on appointment setters. Now, that's not bad because in this example here, if I scroll down, well, actually, we're still at a 2% click-through rate. So let's go back to a 1% click-through rate. If I scroll down, we're making $89,000 in profit after spending $100,000 in ads. So it's not terrible, but you could still scale that way, right? You could, if you wanted to make more money in profit, you could still technically spend $500,000 a month in ads and make $445,000 back. So like 7 times out of 10, just spending more money on ads will work, right? But let's say that we're trying to scale and he's like, look, I just want to be a little bit higher profit margin just to protect myself in case things go wrong. Well, what we want to do is we want to increase this lead to booking ratio by adjusting the messaging on the opt-in page, by adjusting the video sales letter, helping them write a video sales letter, setting up an email campaign, email sequences. And even if we just took, let's say right here, this $89,000, even if we were just able to get 2% of leads to start booking on their own, we just almost doubled from $89,000 to $164,000 in profit just by spending a little bit of time getting this inbound leads book ratio from 0 to 2%. I'm not saying that's to go all the way up to 5%, right? And for most of you, it's like it's an all or nothing thing. Either we get all of our leads from inbound, or inbound's not worth it at all. Where it's like, okay, well, what if you started creating simple YouTube videos like this one, inviting people to book calls down below? You did one of them every single week, and slowly, let's say you started with 1% of people that were leads that are becoming book calls. Well, now you increase your total profit. I think that's roughly by $50,000 or $60,000 just by getting 1% of people to go from lead to booked calls, right? Another great example is if they have good inbound bookings, but they have just garbage outbound bookings, let's say 0%. Well, it's the same thing that we just talked about in a second ago. If you can just hire one appointment setter and you can start getting them to doing 2% of leads by calling leads right away, even if they're not the best appointment setter in the world, let's say it's 1%, right? You're really starting to have an impact on your net profit here on the bottom. Okay, so let's reset both of these and say it's 5% and 5%. Okay, 5%. Cool. Let's go down here again. Show up rate. This is another great example. I was on a call with a client the other day who had a 40% show up rate, which means that his total cash return on ad spend was 2.13x. Now, let me talk about what I've talked about multiple times inside of here. You're at 2.13x ROAS. What should you do? Should you fix the show up rate? Sure. But guess what you could also do? Ravi, I'm only making $100,000 in profit a month. Well, what if we just spent $200,000 in ads? Guess what? You're not going to get $200,000 in profit. And I will tell you, I know I keep on going back to the ad spend thing. I will tell you that just increasing the ad spend actually has is way less work than all the other stuff, right? I think Alex Ramosi says you need to minimize the amount of things that have to be true for it to be right. So, for example, if you're able to adjust the show up rate, well, there's things you can do, and that's what we help our clients do as well. But there's multiple things that have to happen in order for that to work really well. It's not just like you go in your ad manager and you just increase the budget. But people are more like, oh, let me just get every single metric at $100,000 a month to be just perfect before I scale. But that's never going to be the case. That's what the theory of constraints is. Your business is always a dumpster fire. It is never not going to be a dumpster fire. So don't always think that, oh, it has to be perfect. Instead, just be like, okay, how do I make as much money as possible with the current metrics I have, and how do I solve the biggest constraint that we have right now? So for a lot of our clients, we'll adjust their show-up rate by adjusting their show-up rate process, adding in a better pre-call sequence, even, once again, infusing their content, their sales process with content that increases trust, the likability factor. So now we're at a 60% show rate, and we just jumped up to $200,000 in profit from $100,000 in profit just by going from a 40% to a 60% show-up rate. That's how powerful some of these constraints are, okay? So let's go back to 75% here. Let's keep on going down. Other really great example. Close rate, okay? Ravi, I have a garbage close rate. I have a 10% close rate, okay? It's like, okay, that is not great. Closing 10% is honestly pretty bad. But the problem is that if you're trying to, by yourself, increase close rate and you're not working with like one of the things that we'll do for our clients is we will review their sales calls. And so if you're just by yourself and you've never really closed a lot of deals before and you're at 10%, you're probably not going to get out of the 10% close rate area. The other kind of thing about close rate is can be a huge variants of your marketing message. What does your ad copy says? What does the first 6 words say at the top of your ad copy? Who are you calling out? Are they qualified? What kind of qualification percentage do you have in the application process, right? Are you filtering out bad people? There's so many different areas in close rate, and there's all these coaching programs and all these people saying, oh, let's increase close rate. You got to be better at sales. And I'm not saying that you don't have to be better at sales, but in my personal experience, the close rate is more of a factor. Like 80% of that is having to do with marketing, not having to do with sales. So if you go all gung-ho about like, buying all these coaching programs and trying to be the best salesperson in the world, well, that doesn't mean jack potato if you're not using the freaking top of funnel metrics, looking at your marketing. Because guess what sales is after? Sales is a constraint after marketing, right? Marketing is the constraint first, and then it's sales. So that's why focusing on marketing first is always going to help you. And even if you had a low close rate, in this example here, you have $89,000 in profit. Let's say you wanted to increase your close rate, but instead you listen to Ravi and you start testing more ads and you're able to just take your click-through rate from 1% to 2%. Boom! Look at that bad boy right there. $278,000 in profit from what we were at previously, which is $89,000 profit. What do you think is easier? Testing 10 new ads every single week or working tirelessly to try to adjust their pitch and what you say here and there to get your close rate up, right? That is the difference of focusing on the correct constraints inside of your business, okay? Let's keep on bringing this bad boy down here a little bit. Total contract value and cash to revenue ratio. So total contract value, in my personal opinion, most people just don't charge enough. I very firmly believe that because, once again, they started at a certain price when they first started and they've never tested it from there. Actually, we just ran a marketing test in the past 7 days for one of our low-ticket products. It's called the YouTube Lead Machine. You can actually get access to it down below. It's our full system for how we generate dozens of clients a month on YouTube. And our original YouTube Lead Machine price point has been $17. We've sold over 1,000 units at $17, and we just launched it about a month ago. What I wanted to see is if we brought the price point up to $39, what would happen? And so ultimately what I was looking at, and some people could be like, oh, the conversion rate's going to drop, blah, 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 because you're increasing it. So ultimately what happened is the conversion rate did drop. This one over here, our sales page conversion rate was 3.5%, and this one over here, our sales page conversion rate is 1.2%. So I knew it was going to drop, but the question was it going to drop just enough that even though it was less than this number here, it still netted out more money because it's literally more than two times the amount that this thing is here. But of course, I had to run those numbers. I had to project it out and see, okay, what would the sales page conversion rate have to drop to? What's the lowest it could come to that it makes sense and it beats out this one? And unfortunately, it was too low. So now what we're actually going to do is test out $27. And I'm going to see how that affects over the next 7 days, because that's another really great example of just being more profitable. Because let's say my total contract value is $10,000 and it's at $89,000 as my profit. Let's say I'm just able to increase it by $2,000 from $10,000 to $12,000. I just increased my total profit from $89,000 to $126,000 without any more work, just by saying on the call, hey, it's $12,000 instead of $10,000. And I just made, what is that, $40,000 in extra profit just by changing it from $10,000 to $12,000. Maybe you're a little nervous. Maybe you don't want to go up $2,000. Well, let's say we just take it from $10,000 and we make it $11,000. So we go from $89,000 to $108,000, which is 108 minus 89. You just made $19,000 in pure profit by changing from saying it's $10,000 to it's $11,000, right? How little is that change, and how much does that impact your bottom line? But nobody tracks this stuff. Nobody even thinks of it. I'm getting animated over here, you guys. And that's what you need to be looking at when you're running these numbers, okay? Let's take it back to $10,000. Let's bring back to one of my clients who was at a 40% cash to revenue ratio previously, $89,000. We seem to really love that number there. Well, that actually the profit here won't change because this is after everything's said and done. So we'll say the total cash collected is $100,000 after the $100,000 in spend. So you're just breaking even on your return on ad spend. But let's say we're able to get it from 40% to 60%. Well, now you just added $50,000 in this example to your cash that you're collecting that same month that you're spending the $100,000. How much safer would you feel? How much more like stress-free would you feel not just barely breaking even on the cash and waiting for that revenue to come in, but literally taking in an extra $50,000 in cash that same month just by removing your lowest payment plan, right? So now you're going from 40% to 60%, and obviously our ultimate goal is 80%, okay? And then delinquency rate. Now, I will say that delinquency rate and refund and chargeback rate is one of the things that is one of the hardest things to adjust. So here's a true story. Delinquency rate over the past couple of years has always been the same, right? It's been roughly, let's say, 8 to 13%. It varies slightly. So, but that's an example of a constraint where between 8 and 13%, okay, I could go in and we could, I don't know, hire another billing support agent, and we could work with the collections agency to do all this extra stuff other than what we do on our own and all this stuff here. And maybe I get it up to 15%, but all that time, energy, and effort for something I don't even know if it's going to work or not, right? Versus just baking into this price point and understand that it's going to happen. But for one of my clients who is at 40% delinquency rate, well, look at this. It went from $81,000 to $31,000. So that's a really high delinquency rate, 40%. So we need to go in there and attack that right away, because we're going to do all this work just to have 40% of the money that we contracted just disappear on the back end. So what can we do? For that example client, we removed his lowest payment plan. We also extended out his offer an extra month. Now, the issue with extending out your offer an extra month is you're going to have to do more fulfillment for clients. But if you could extend out your offer an extra month and you could run the numbers, and let's say you increase your cost to fulfill a client by 10% or 5% or something like that. But if you were able to increase your delinquency rate, or I'm sorry, decrease your delinquency rate from 40%, let's say, to 20%, well, it would have such a bigger impact, $74,000 from $31,000, than whatever additional cost you would get from having an extra month or 2 months serving your clients. So these are all projections that's why this is called a projection sheet. These are all projections that you essentially need to run out, okay? Refund and chargeback rate. You know, I know people that run full money-back guarantees for all their offers. And here's a fun story. We used to run a money-back guarantee for my offer. If you look at it now, we don't run a money-back guarantee anymore. That's because I ran it for an entire year, and our refund and chargeback rate was 25%. Now, you might be saying, well, Ravi, do better services and do better work for clients. Funny story. We actually decided to remove the refund and chargeback rate because I've been in business now for almost 5 years. And when I ran the numbers, I said, okay, when you run everything through this sheet here, we were actually netting less money than we were previously. Because the only reason you do a money-back guarantee is because you think you're going to acquire more clients. And if you might acquire more clients, but you also might be losing that same amount of money on the back end, but now you're attracting the wrong people because you have all this messaging that's like, oh, get your money back, get your money back. So people have one foot out of the door before they even start working with you, right? And that's exactly what happened to us. We started closing more units, but our refund rate went up higher. And so we ended up being, okay, well, ultimately we're doing more work, having to deal with more problem clients because we're offering this money back guarantee. What if we just remove it? We're going to net out the exact same amount of money. Or you might net out a little bit less, but now you have way less stress to deal with. And that's ultimately what the decision I made. I said, you know what? I know people doing $30, $40, $50 million a year without money back guarantees, so why do I have to have one? So end of not last year but the year before that, we removed our money back guarantee, and we've been 100 times happier company since then, and we get our clients unbelievable results. I'm not saying that we couldn't offer a money back guarantee. You can go check out scalingwithsystems.com/wins or scalingwithsystems.com/case studies. You'll see literally thousands of client wins inside of there. So it's not that we don't treat our clients well, but you have to see how does this impact your whole marketing process. And what we learned was that we were just attracting the wrong people. We were attracting people who were literally one foot out the door right from the beginning, right? So let's take this back down to 2% or 1%, and that's going to make a much cleaner, healthier company. And many of you might subscribe to the $100 million offers and money back guarantee, everything, and everything's the most irresistible offer ever, but don't do that unless you're running these numbers here and you understand. And also know what type of business do you want to have, right? Do you want to have one that just has the most top line revenue possible so you can brag to people? I was on a call with someone the other day who's doing multiple millions of dollars a month, but they're only taking home roughly 8% of their total revenue in profit, which means that they were netting like $150,000 to $250,000 a month, which you could do that with literally just YouTube videos, right? And honestly, this person was really frustrated that they were dealing with that because they, at one point, were netting millions of dollars every single month, and now they're experiencing a bunch of changes in the marketplace, and they were really frustrated with it. But the point being that he was smart enough to know, okay, cool, I'm making millions of dollars a month top line, but I know that because of all these changes and these numbers inside of here, I'm only taking home, let's say, $150,000 to $250,000 a month. And so I need to make adjustments here. Something needs to change is in essence what he was telling me. But what most people will do is they won't ever talk about that. I have a lot of respect for this guy because he was like, I know that this isn't fun for me. This isn't, and so instead of bragging to everybody, oh, I'm making millions of dollars a month, he's like, what is my take home profit and how do I adjust that so that I have a business that I actually love and enjoy, right? And then you have setter commission, which we already talked about, and closer commission that you can play with. These are some really good examples here. So let me just make sure all these numbers are right here. Oh, close rate. Let's take close rate back up to 20%, right? These closer commissions, setter commissions, let's say that over a span of, let's say, 4 to 5 months, you were able to lower your closer commission from 10% to 7%. Well, you can see right there, you just made an additional $13,000 in this example here, which at scale, if we were to come back up here and say, let's spend $300,000 in a month, let's come back down here. At scale, going from 10% to 7% is 834 to 874. So 74 minus 34. So you're making an extra 40 bands, 40 freaking racks, $40,000 by changing it from 10% to 7%. And most people would never even dream of changing commission structures because they are afraid to lose a closer, blah, 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 which I get. I actually can adjust my percentages for closers that we have if we have somebody that's been with us for a while, if I don't want them to leave, blah, blah, blah. But then maybe the new closers that I have coming in, let's say I have one closer at 10% and I want to get people to 7%, then everybody that has been grandfathered in, they're going to be at 10%, but the new people I'm hiring, they're at 7%, which puts us, let's say, at 9%, right? Average, well, still I'm netting out ahead, right? Because I did the math and I realized, okay, I don't want to lose this person, so I'll keep them here, but the new people here are going to be lower, which would rough out to 9%, which adds thousands of dollars to my bottom line every single month. Don't forget, if you want to get instant free access to this exact same Google Sheet that you can use to scale your business, you can click the link in the description down below. And if you want my help scaling your business, if you want to get on a call with me or one of our team members where we can actually walk through this sheet with you and punch in some numbers to help you be able to identify what your biggest constraint is and then explain to you what we would do in order to scale your business and remove that constraint, make sure you click the link down below where it says apply to work with me one-on-one. We can hop on a call and we can talk.